Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, 10 more amazing facts about The Simpsons. In the past, we did a video about America's most beloved fictional family, The Simpsons, but since that list had only 10 entries, it didn't even come close to doing them justice. After all, this is a TV show that's been on the air for 30 years. So today we've decided to make another video telling you more about our yellow friends, their backstories, and some other facts you might not have known about them. I don't want to bore you with a long and tedious introduction, but I just want to say there are a lot of copyright issues around The Simpsons, so if we're not including any video clips, that is exactly why. Number 10. Smithers' coming out is based on real life. There was no real surprise for anyone who's a fan of the show that Smithers, Mr. Burns' loyal assistant yes-man/servant, is gay, but up until more recent years, the show never truly said it out loud. During the 17th episode of the 27th season, called The Burns Cage, the show officially gave its audience this particular confirmation. Mr. Smithers finally accepts the fact that the love he has for his boss will never be reciprocated, and Homer even helps him on his search for true love. What's less obvious and less known about this is that the writer of the episode, Rob Lazebnik, said the episode was inspired by his own gay son. When Johnny Lazebnik, a teenager, came out of the closet and admitted to his own sexual preferences in front of his family, his father was very accepting and loving. "I'm a Midwestern guy, so I don't tend to wear my emotions on my sleeve," the elder Lazebnik told the New York Post. "But I thought, what better way to tell my son I love him than to write a cartoon about it?" His son then had this to say about the matter: "The revelation that my father loves me is not much of a revelation. He's unbelievably accepting. We're as close as a straight dad and a gay son could be." Number 9. Lisa can predict the Super Bowl. There's something of an unspoken tradition with The Simpsons, which started back in 1992. This is that Lisa predicts the next champion of the Super Bowl in real life. It all started with Lisa the Greek in the 49th episode of the show, where Homer tricks his eldest daughter into helping him gamble on football. When she finds out, she makes a bet where the winner of the Super Bowl will be the Washington Redskins if she is to love him, or the Buffalo Bills if she doesn't. Just before the show went out, these two teams were actually squaring off in Super Bowl 26, and Washington won by 37-24. Over the following 3 years, the producers made it a tradition to air the episode just before the Super Bowl and alter the dialogue to fit the two teams playing that year. According to DVD commentary, Lisa accurately predicted the winning team every single year. Number 8. Bart's prank calls to Moe really happened. The more we delve into The Simpsons, the more we realize just how real the show is. Another fact based more on reality than anything else are the prank calls that Bart makes to Moe's bar, just so he can have a laugh at how grumpy the owner is. These calls are loosely based on the tube bar prank calls, which actually happened back in the 1970s. Two young men by the names of John Elmo and Jim Davidson came up with the idea one day while passing the Tube Bar in New Jersey. They noticed the owner, heavyweight boxer Louis Red Deutsch, beating one of his customers for not drinking fast enough. Known for his easily ruffled feathers, the two would often call up the bar and ask the owner if they could speak to a fictitiously named customer. These names were mostly pun-based, like pepperoni, pepperoni, alcoholic, alcoholic, and let's say a few more colorful options that started with the first name Mike. Most of the time Deutsch would call out the names, but sometimes he would catch on and respond with extreme hostility, shouting mostly profanity with obscene sexual references. Number 7. Bush hoped Americans would not emulate The Simpsons. In 1992, while still in office, former US President George H.W. Bush gave a speech in which he said, "We are going to keep on trying to make American families a lot more like the Waltons and a lot less like The Simpsons." As a response, the show came out with a statement for the next season in which Bart said, "Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression, too." They also came out with a later episode in which the Bushes moved to Springfield. But this is not the only time the Bushes came into contact with The Simpsons. Back in 1990, 2 years before the president made his speech, his wife and First Lady, Barbara Bush, were quoted in People magazine as saying The Simpsons was the dumbest thing she had ever seen. Not long after, she received a polite reply in the form of a letter from none other than Marge Simpson. This, in turn, was followed by Barbara Bush's own apologetic reply. Unfortunately, their communication stopped, and it's quite safe to say that they didn't become actual pen pals. Number 6. Where is Springfield really? Springfield is a fairly common town name throughout the US, so which one is it really? The question is somewhat difficult to answer and has been boggling people's minds for a long while. In an interview, the Simpsons creator Matt Groening said, "I don't want to ruin it for people, you know? Whenever people say it's Springfield, Ohio, or Springfield, Massachusetts, or Springfield, wherever, I always go, yeah, that's right. This line of thinking makes us believe that Springfield is just a generic place that could easily fit anywhere within the US, as to be more easily relatable to its audience. Nevertheless, we do know that Groening grew up on Evergreen Terrace in Portland, Oregon, which is just 100 miles north of Springfield, Oregon. Springfield was named after Springfield, Oregon. The only reason is that when I was a kid, the TV show Father Knows Best took place in the town of Springfield, and I was thrilled because I imagined it was the town next to Portland, my hometown. This is what Groening told Smithsonian Magazine. But in the show itself, a letter to Mr. Burns indicates that he lives in Springfield, New Jersey. Another instance has the narrator talking about the Simpsons as this Kentuckian family, but to be fair, the narrator may have been indicating that the family originally came from Kentucky. There is also one opening couch gag where the camera zooms out from the Simpsons' house above the town of Springfield, continuing over the entire US and subsequently the entire universe. Here, the location of Springfield suggests it to be somewhere around the Great Lakes area, probably in Illinois. Number 5. The first season is different from the rest. Like most other animated shows, especially those with a particularly long run, it's not surprising to see some differences, especially in design, after a few seasons. In The Simpsons, however, there are several other changes that make the first season different from the rest. For example, Homer's voice was made higher-pitched and less intelligent-sounding than it initially was. Chief Wiggum's hair color changes from black to blue, not to mention Mr. Smithers, who was initially black, as well as Officer Lou, who had yellow skin at the beginning of Season 1. The first episodes also had a somewhat different opening sequence. While Bart is skateboarding on the street on his way home from school, we don't see any of the recognizable characters that we got used to in later episodes. We instead see a bunch of people running after a bus. Lisa is seen riding her bike, overburdened with schoolbooks, and then parking it just before Homer's car pulls into the driveway. The rest is similar to how it is today, except for the couch gag, which changes every time. Number 4. Marge has bunny ears. The reason for Marge's long, cylindrical-shaped hairdo has nothing to do with the style women were wearing during the late 1980s, because they weren't, for the most part, wearing their hair like that. Admittedly, Matt Groening's mother, Margaret, did wear it during the 1960s, and she in fact is the inspiration for Marge. But the real reason for why Marge is wearing that style is actually quite strange. From the very beginning, Matt Groening decided to reveal in the very last episode of the show, whenever that may be, that Marge actually had bunny ears underneath her blue hair. The idea came as a shock to the other writers and the co-creators of the show. In fact, co-creator Sam Simon got really angry and managed to convince Groening that this was a stupid idea and that they would not be using it. Nevertheless, in the Simpsons arcade game, Groening did manage to have his own way, after all, and Marge was given large bunny ears. The reasoning behind Matt Groening's original idea is still a mystery. Given that Marge did appear in Playboy and could now be considered a Playboy bunny, it seems almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Number 3. The most guest stars ever. While the show holds the Guinness World Record for the longest-running primetime TV animated series, it also holds the record for the most guest stars to appear in the show, with over 600. Among them are Stephen Hawking, Jon Stewart, and Katy Perry. Michael Jackson also made an appearance in an episode portraying a mental patient who believed that he was Michael Jackson. In the episode credits, however, the voice is credited as John J. Smith. 3 of the Beatles have also appeared in the show: George Harrison, Homer's Barbershop Quartet, Ringo Starr, Brush with Greatness, and Paul McCartney, Lisa the Vegetarian. There has even been an entire episode dedicated to the passing of the late George Harrison. Since John Lennon passed away long before the show even premiered, his song Mother was used in an episode, meaning, in a sense, that all of the Beatles had their voices heard within The Simpsons. Number 2. Who is Maggie? Unlike the other characters in the show, which all have their respective actors voicing them throughout the many seasons, Maggie Simpson was played by anyone who was willing. Most of the female voices in the show have had a go at the spike-haired baby, creating her cute baby grunts and babblings, and, on occasion, even delivering some lines in her dreams or other fantasies. In the beginning of the show, most of her squeaks and cries were done by Yardley Smith, but in later seasons, this arduous task fell mostly on Nancy Cartwright, who is also known as the voice behind Bart, Nelson, Ralph Wiggum, Todd Flanders, and a few others on occasion. In some special instances, however, guest stars have been brought on to voice the awesome role of Maggie Simpson. Her first ever word was actually spoken by Elizabeth Taylor in the episode Lisa's First Word. Even though the word was simply Daddy, Taylor had to record the word numerous times before the producers were satisfied. Jodie Foster voiced a Howard Rourke-inspired Maggie, who rallied babies in yet another daycare escape. And let's not forget the James L. Jones version of Maggie in the Treehouse of Horror 5 episode. But the most important Maggie role is actually played by Matt Groening himself, who's the source for the ever-present pacifier sucking. Number 1. Best and worst episodes. Like with every other show out there are good episodes and there are not so good episodes. The Season 2 premiere episode, called Bart Gets an F, was a bit controversial to say the least. It was the first episode in the series to mainly focus on Bart, the most popular character at the time, as opposed to Homer and the family as a whole. This was coupled with putting the show up against The Bill Cosby Show back before people realized how creepy and awful its star was. Nevertheless, these two gambles paid off in the end, and the episode brought in the best Nielsen ratings that the show had ever seen. The episode even had quite an interesting moral message. Even if you try your hardest, you're not guaranteed to succeed. This is still the highest viewed episode of the show to date. On the other end of the popularity spectrum is The Great Simpsina, which aired during the 22nd season of the show. The episode revolves around Lisa being a great magician, which sounds fine and all, but was hurt by a couple of things. The first is that Lisa isn't exactly the most popular character on the series. She's great for sure, but she's pretty far down the cast depth chart for carrying her own episodes. But at the end of the day, the real reason why this was the least viewed episode has more to do with the fact that it appeared far later than Bart Gets an F. This is because the entire show itself has been losing popularity as a whole as the years have gone on. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every day of the week. Also, I've got a podcast. It's called BrainFood, and it's got educational, entertaining content just like this. It's a bit longer form and goes into a lot of depth on a specific subject, getting into all of the fascinating little details. You can check it out through the link in the description below, or just search your favorite podcast app for BrainFood. And if you like this YouTube channel, you are sure to love that podcast. But if you want to watch something else right now, why not check out a related video from the TopTenz archives over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.